Hey, well, welcome to another week of House Church. And man, I just got to tell you, I love House Church. I love my house church. And we are week 2 of a series called Available. And my big prayer for us today is pretty simple, that you would make yourself available, to be used by God. Because I truly believe the moment that you and I say, God, I'm available, and God, I want to be used by you, I want to be actively involved in your story, then what's going to happen is God's going to blow your mind. You're going to see how good he really is. And you're going to start to see how powerful he really is, because we've been created to be a part of a bigger story than ourselves. And the way that we get to kind of get in line with that story is when we just simply say, God, I'm available. And the message that we're going to look at, and kind of like the title of this whole idea, is to be a stone roller. And I believe that that's what God has called us to do. And it's coming from a passage in John chapter 11. And it's in John chapter 11. It's a familiar passage. That's why I tried to give it a title that would stick for years to come, is my prayer. And what's kind of happening is where Jesus, it's the passage where Jesus raised Lazarus to life. And really the circumstances kind of surrounding that is Lazarus and Jesus, they were friends. And then Lazarus also had 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, and they were completely upset. And they were just like in shock because their brother had died. They're a little bit angry at Jesus. And where we're going to pick up is a little bit past that story. So I'm just going to read a little section of it, but you can read the entire passage in your house church. And so really what I want to talk about is where Jesus steps up to the tomb because his heart was broken for Lazarus and the other people that were hurting. And then Jesus, once more deeply moved, this is verse 38, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb and it was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. And Jesus said, take away the stone. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed that you would see the glory of God? And just a side note, believing comes before seeing. If you want to see how good God is, then you have to believe that he's good. Believing comes before the seeing. And so they took away the stone. And then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you have sent me. And so what I want us to do is ask a question. What does the stone represent? Like, what is it symbolic of? I mean, think about it. You had Jesus, you had the stone, and then you had Lazarus. And so the stone was literally the barrier that was keeping Jesus from doing a work in Lazarus's life, or keeping Lazarus from being able to experience what Jesus had in store for him. So the stone is kind of symbolic, for us today, of the barrier that might be in people's lives that's keeping them from experiencing all that God has for them. And, I think in today's age, there are about 4 main stones. And one of the stones is the stone of shame and guilt, where, people are, that's the barriers that people think back on their past, and they think back on all the mistakes they made and all the poor decisions and all this type of stuff. And that they just got so much shame, so much guilt in their life that's the hindrance. That's the stone. That's the barrier that's keeping them from experiencing God. And then there's the stone of irrelevance. And this one hurts a little bit because there's been some new studies come out where they had spoke with some unchurched people, and unchurched folks are saying, one of the biggest reasons I don't go to church or follow Jesus is because I look at those who do, and their life don't look any different than mine. And man, that hurts a little bit because as Jesus followers, man, we've been called to be set apart, to value different things, to act differently, to be salt and light. And if they don't see any difference in our life, then our life literally has become the stone that's keeping people from the Lord. And man, we don't want that. And then there's the stone of busyness. And this is one we get. I'm not hating on you. We've all have fit so much into our day and into our week and into our month that we don't have any margin. And so sometimes it's just we're too busy, and busyness has become the stone. It's become the barrier, keeping people from their walk with the Lord. And another stone that I think is a massive stone is the stone of being unchurched. And you might think, well, what do you even mean by that? Well, it's the stone of being unchurched because you're never invited. And man, that was my story. I was unchurched simply because I wasn't invited. I'm not upset about it. That was just kind of how it went. But the moment that I got invited to church, you know what happened? The stone, it got removed. Their invitation removed the stone in my life so that I could hear the invitation from the Lord, where God said, hey, Timmy, it's time to come on home. It's time to experience the life that I have for you. So when we step into people's lives and we invite them to church and see the power of an invitation, when we invite them into church, what we're doing is we're removing the stone from their life so that they can experience a heavenly invitation. And so if we want to be stone rollers and we want to make ourselves available to be used by God, to invite people into the family of God, then a couple of big ideas, a couple of big principles that I want us to grab a hold of is this: as stone rollers, we can't count God out. That's what Martha did. If you kind of look back a little bit in that passage, Martha was like, well, Jesus, like he's been there for 4 days. Like we can't move the stone. And so Martha had already counted Jesus out. And it's interesting because Lazarus was Martha's brother. And so Martha counted Jesus out on her own brother. And that's how it works, is we typically count God out on the people that we love the most. So if we want to be a stone roller, man, we can't count God out. The second thing is this, is stone rollers, man, we got to choose courage over comfort. And we live in a day and age, and I'm drawn to comfort. Like I'm drawn to a convenient life. I'm drawn to trying to control the narrative of all these different things. But if I just got to be honest with you, like if we want to be actively involved in what God is doing and we want to say, God, I'm available. Well, here's the thing is we have to let go of comfort so that we can step into our calling. We have to choose to be courageous over comfortable. In the moment that we do that, we'll step away from the crowd and we'll step into what God's calling us to do. So we got to choose courage over comfort. And then, the last thing is this, is we have to understand, stone rollers got to understand that being available is greater than ability. So availability is greater than ability. Because I hate to break this news to you, but God doesn't need your ability. He's God. What God is looking for is people to say, you know what? I'm available. And I want to be used by you. And so we have to say that, and we have to agree and believe that availability is more important than ability. And, here's the deal is when you and I get to a place where we say, you know what, God, I'm available and I believe that you are able, then guess what happens? Is the stage is set for God to do a massive work. We just have to make ourselves available and believe that God is truly able to do everything that he wants to do. And God will transform people's lives and you'll have a front row seat to it. And guess what? Your mind will be blown at how good God is. And here's what I want you to know. About 16, 17 years ago was when I received an invitation to church for the first time. I was 19. And that one invitation to church, it transformed my life, the trajectory of my life, and I truly believe that I'm here today as a result of an invitation 17 years ago. So never underestimate the power of an invitation.